Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how you can make Königsberger Klopse or German meatballs in a white caper sauce. It is a very classic German dish. It's actually one of my absolute favorite childhood dishes that my mom always used to make for me. So in this video I'm going to show you how you can make it. And as with pretty much all of the recipes here on my channel, it is very straightforward and no fuzz, but still super delicious and really good. And if you're new here on my channel, my name is Anja here at Our Gebot Home, where I love sharing our simple heritage homemaking and homesteading journey. I always have a lot of recipes, especially German recipes, because that is my background, just like this one here. And let's get right into it. I have already prepped a few ingredients here. By the way, you don't need to take any notes here. I have a link to a printable recipe in the box below this video, so you don't need to take any notes here, and you can just enjoy watching this video. I have here a chopped, diced, medium-sized onion. You can also use 2 smaller onions. I have about a tablespoon of chopped parsley. I have here already soaking So in Germany, you always find these breakfast rolls. That is typically what is being used in Germany, and the better if it's actually day old, a little bit stale. I cut a piece of French bread, which is just the same, or any kind of bread, and I have already started soaking it in about half a cup of milk. So you want this to be somewhat soft, and I'm gonna turn the pieces here a little bit to let them soak on the other side. And then over here I have a good pound of ground beef. I love using grass-fed beef from our local butcher. And 1 egg. And then we'll combine the onions here with the meat, and I can also put the parsley right in there. Add the onions. And the egg. And I will mix this up just a little bit. So here's a quick tip. If you love the taste of onions, you can dice them a little bit bigger. If you like the onions to be kind of mixed into the meatballs, then you can do what I'm doing and cut them a little bit smaller. Some people like to fry their onions or saute their onions ahead of time to make them a little bit softer. That is a step that obviously adds a little bit more effort to the recipe, but you can also do that. And just for today's sake, I'm not going to show you that, but you can always do it to soften, saute the onions ahead of time before you mix them into the ground beef. We have pre-mixed this a little bit. I also did that so that I could give my bread a little bit more time to soak here. And then what we'll do is squeeze out the milk and put the bread into the meat mixture. And here comes the really good part, and that is using your hands to mix this up. And now I'll form about 8 evenly sized meatballs out of this. You can also make them smaller meatballs. You can make 12 meatballs. So ideally this recipe is about 4 people. And if you have 3 per person, but that is entirely up to you how small or big you want to make the meatballs. I like them a little bit on the smaller side because they just look nicer on your plate, and also they're easier to portion out and they cook faster. So as it turns out, I have 9 meatballs here, and if you have a piece of bread sticking out just like that, you can kind of tuck it in a little bit, and don't worry so much about the onions. Some of the bigger ones on the outside will fall off. That's part of the cooking process. So here I have 2 cups of broth or bouillon or stock that you can use, and we will heat that up in a pot over the stove. And as you can see, that is barely covering the bottom, and I'm just adding a little bit more so that the meatballs can be just about covered. Once the water is boiling, we'll add the meatballs to the broth. We really only want a gentle simmer. We don't want a full-blown boil because that's just going to make the meatballs disintegrate. So we'll want a gentle simmer, and I'm going to put the lid back on, and we'll simmer them for about 10 minutes or a little bit more until they're done. I will flip them halfway through. When the meatballs are done, we will take them out of the broth. Put them on a plate like this. We'll set those aside. And as you can see, there's a lot of little SKP onions in here. So what I will do is strain the broth over a sieve. And that is more than I have room for in here. Let me find another cup. Because my family always complains that there is not enough sauce. The sauce really makes this dish. Now I'm going to rinse the pot really quick to start with a clean pot. And in that same pot, I am melting about 2 to 3 tablespoons of butter. And add about the same amount of flour to that to make the base for the sauce. So this roux in German is actually called Mehlschwitze, which means sweating the flour. So we'll let the flour and the butter sweat for a little bit, Mehlschwitze. And I'm adding the broth gradually back to this butter-flour mixture. If you have lumps in here, just go ahead and stir it really well with a whisk and let it kind of boil, and then you can add a little bit more broth to it. And I think my pot is not sitting evenly on the stove, which is why it gives that rattling sound. Let me hold it here. And then we bring that to a gentle boil just to cook the sauce a little bit. So eventually the sauce should be kind of thick, just like a regular sauce. If your sauce is a little bit thicker than mine, you can always add a little bit more of your strained broth, or you can add a little bit more flour and thicken the sauce so that you can add a little bit more broth to it. I'm going to turn this off for a moment while I'm adding about a tablespoon or so of lemon juice. tablespoon or so of drained capers. We love capers, so we always go a little heavier on the capers. If you're not such a big fan, you can always use a little less. And about half a cup of sour cream. You can use regular cream. Most recipes will tell you to use regular cream. I think that sour cream gives it a nicer, more complex flavor, and it's a little healthier in my book. But you can totally use regular heavy whipping sweet cream. I'll add just a little bit of sugar to round out the flavor, not to make it very sweet. And then I'll season with salt and pepper. And really at this point, you need to taste it. Even though I have this exact recipe that you can print out, your taste buds may be different, your preferences may be different, so I always suggest that you taste it, and then you can always add a little bit more lemon juice, a little bit more cream or sour cream, a little bit more salt, a little bit more pepper, a little bit more sugar, or anything else that you can imagine. I think it needs a little bit more salt. And then all you do is you add the meatballs back to the sauce. And really the key to this dish is to slather the meatballs in the sauce and cover the meatballs with the sauce. And the best way to serve your Königsberger Klopse is with boiled potatoes. You can even use dumplings, but boiled potatoes really is the classic pairing. If you enjoyed this recipe, please give me a like, and if you're looking for more authentic German recipes, I have an entire playlist here with lots of recipes. Thank you so much for joining me in my kitchen, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.